Okay. Again, so my name is Binish Saxena. I'm your host. This is our second public meeting. And this meeting is being recorded. Let me tell you how this project, Center for Consciousness Development, started. I have been interested in spirituality and humanity since a long time. I have a foundation which helps the needy, and I will share a file here. It is not open. So this foundation has two objectives. One is to help the needy. We help anybody who is in financial difficulty. And the second objective of the foundation is to explore spiritual questions, unanswered spiritual questions. Is soul there? Is there life after life? Is God there? By profession and by background, I'm an engineer. So logic plays a big part in my thinking. When I look at different religions, different spiritual practices like praying, chanting, yoga, meditation, even walking in the nature, I ask myself a question: what is going on here? What are people are trying to do? On the other hand, there are many unanswered and unexplainable situations. Take a simple example. Where does the universe end? Where does the space end? Also, why some people have psychic abilities like telepathy, mediumship, teleporting, and all kinds of things. And many people don't have any abilities, psychic abilities. Some people are very rich, and some people are on the street, having nothing to eat. Also, some people have near-death experiences, and most of the people don't. So what is going on here? As we contemplate on these questions, we come to the conclusion that there is a higher or greater reality. There is a universal consciousness, and this universal consciousness is giving us flashes here and there. We don't know the whole story. Take the two analogies. If there was a movie and few scenes were showing to you at random, you will not know what is going on. What is the whole movie about? Take another analogy. If there is a storybook and you are given few sentences to read, you will not get an idea what the whole story is. So same thing, as we contemplate on these things, we find that there is a greater reality than we know. There is a higher consciousness. So this is why I started this project, Center for Consciousness Development. I have come to the conclusion that the most important objective for the life is to raise the consciousness. If we can raise the consciousness and get connected to the universal consciousness, we can be in a state of bliss, we can develop intuition, we can realize our dreams, we can get answer to unanswered questions. So this is why this Center for Consciousness Development, and our objective is to assist people of all faiths, beliefs, backgrounds, from entire spectrum of diversity to improve the understanding of the universe and our own reality. Also increase the awareness of internal and external, and develop raised consciousness. We are volunteer-based organization, and our objective is to have most of the meetings free. You can give the donation at the website, and some of our team members are here. Our team members, raise your hands. Jocelyn is there, Mary is there, Peter, Eric, Brian, Carmela. So all these people make the things happen and see what we can do better. Now, without further, let me introduce our speaker, Jeff Carreira, today. He is the co-founder of Emergence Education and founder and guiding teacher of the Mystery School for a New Paradigm. He teaches meditation, spiritual philosophy, and how to let go. Make people question their deeply held assumptions about the reality. He is inspired to explore new ways of being in the world and move us from the current paradigm of separation and isolation into paradigm of unity and wholeness. Thousands of people have experienced awakened awareness through the simple meditation techniques. He calls the technique the Art of Conscious Contentment. And these experiences expand our sense of imagination, open us to new possibilities, and fuel our passion for higher consciousness. He will also talk about some of his personal experiences related to consciousness. And he is the author of 19 non-fiction books and 6 novels. So now, further delay, I will pass over to Mr. Jeff Carreira. Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Vinesh. And thank you everyone for being here. I see a lot of familiar faces and recognize a lot of names. So those of you who know me, I want to thank you for being here. It's so supportive. And of course, Carmela, whom I see, thank you for suggesting this opportunity to meet. And those of you that I have never met, thank you for being here. And I'm looking forward to sharing what it is that I teach with you. And as Vinesh just said, when I teach meditation, I teach it as the art of conscious contentment, or the practice of no problem. And maybe we'll just start by meditating a little bit together according to those instructions. And the instructions are very simple. Vinesh, I wonder if you can mute your line.
I don't think I can mute my line.
Well, you should be able to. Up in the top 3, there's 3 dots. I think if you click on the 3 dots in your picture, you'll see a mute.
You click on the microphone, there is
Oh, the
Right.
microphone in the bottom corner, yes. Bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Thank you. I don't know if that's really Jocelyn, but thank you. That's very good. So yes, I call it the practice of no problem, the art of conscious contentment. Both. So for those of you who are not familiar with the way that I teach, all I will ask you to do is sit comfortably. You can have your eyes open or closed. And no matter what happens, don't make a problem out of it. Or no matter what happens, just be content. So no matter what your mind might be doing, all you need to do is be okay with it. So your mind might be frustrated. Your mind might be bored. Your mind can be all kinds of things, and you can still be okay. That's what I refer to as the miracle of meditation. Miracle of meditation is the discovery that you can be content no matter what your mind is doing. Unfortunately, we tend to be trained that we can't be happy unless our mind is happy, which means we can't be happy unless we're feeling happy. And so we're constantly trying to negotiate life in a way that it maximizes our experience of being happy. But the real miracle of meditation is the discovery that you can be content no matter what your mind is doing. Your mind doesn't have to be happy for you to be. But this is some practice. So let's just sit quietly, eyes open or closed. Just let everything be as it is. Don't try to change anything. Don't make a problem out of anything. Be content no matter what your mind is doing. Just relax. No matter what your mind is doing, no matter what you might happen to be thinking or feeling, you just let yourself be relaxed about it all. Your mind doesn't have to cooperate. Your mind can't stop you from relaxing and being at ease. When we sit in meditation, we will be tempted to get busy, to try to do something, to consciously follow the instruction. To change somehow the way we think or feel, or what we're thinking or feeling. Because that's how we've been taught. But instead, we're not going to do anything. You don't even have to relax. Relaxing is not something you do. Relaxing is what happens when you're not doing something else. One of the great ways to get tense is to try to relax. You can get very tense trying to relax. But if you just don't do anything, relaxing is what happens. So in meditation, we're not doing anything, and we're allowing relaxation to take place.
Mais pourquoi je
faire là ici? Qui était là?
When that happens, you just think about it like the turbulence of your mind. Just never know when it's going to come in there and talk to you. Doesn't have to disturb anything. Your mind can't do anything to you. It can't touch you. All it does is try to convince you that you have a problem. But it can't give you a problem. It has to convince you that you have one. It has to fool you. If you can't be fooled, then you realize, well, your mind might have a problem. Your mind might be feeling a certain way, but that's not you. So in meditation, we're just practicing
when the link went out, it says 9:30.
being calm. You see, no matter what happens.
But I have
when you're newer to meditation, you love the meditations that are very quiet. You know, you get up early, it's quiet, you feel relaxed. That's lovely. I highly recommend it. It's not that valuable. Anybody can be relaxed when your mind is relaxed. There's no big challenge there. That's like being happy when your mind is happy. Who can't do that? I mean, you do meet the occasional person who finds it hard to be happy even when their mind is happy, but that's rare. Eventually, you start to realize that the most valuable meditations are the ones where your mind is going crazy. It's doing everything it can to convince you that there's something really wrong. And you're still just sitting there calm and relaxed. And you're building a muscle of contentment that will serve you in life. So I had been meditating a lot for decades. For 2 decades, I'd been meditating 2 hours a day regularly. And then every Sunday, I did 8 hours. And then I would do 2 10-day retreats a year. I tried to count up my hours of meditation during that time, and it appeared to be something around the order of 80,000, which, according to what I've read, is 10 times what you need to master something. So I must be pretty good at it. But after having meditated for nearly 20 years that way, I got a call from the hospital one afternoon saying that my wife had been in a head-on collision with an 18-wheeler and was in the emergency room, and I needed to come right away. And when I asked them how she was doing, they said, "I'm sorry, we can't give you that information over the phone," which is a very unfortunate situation. So, of course, my body panicked. You know, I was shaking like a leaf with fear. I couldn't drive. I couldn't possibly drive. I had to ask my neighbor to take me to the hospital, which was about a 25-minute drive. But because of the deep habit of meditation that I've developed over the years, I found that even though my mind was going crazy, you know what minds do under panicky situations like that is they keep showing you images of the worst case scenarios. Minds think they're helping you that way. They're preparing you for the worst so you'll be ready. And you can't really convince them that this is not helping. You know, that I don't really need to see these images. Thank you very much. So the mind keeps throwing that at you. Your body shakes with panic and fear. But I found myself being relatively relaxed about it. Not because I was happy that it had happened, not because I wasn't terrified, but because I knew it just was what it was, and I was going to deal with it however it turned out. And I thought, as I was on my way to the hospital, I thought, what if the worst case scenario is actually true and she's no longer alive, or she's, you know, disabled for life in some horrible way? I thought, would life be bad then? And I instantly realized that life would not be bad. It was clear to me that my life would be terrible, but life itself would be just as good as it was the day before. the sun would keep coming up, the flowers would keep blooming. The stars would shine at night. The world would continue to be the wondrous place that it is, even if my life were horrible. And then a profound calm descended on me, and I was ready. I was ready for whatever I was going to find. All I wanted was to be as available as possible to respond to whatever situation I found at the hospital. I wanted to be as helpful as I could be under whatever circumstances I would encounter. And so, very briefly, what I want to tell you, what I want to share with you first, is that meditation is about learning to be content no matter what your mind is doing, learning to be okay. It's radical acceptance of all aspects of life. And the first huge benefit of that is that it makes you available for anything. It allows you to meet every situation, at least potentially, with a wide open heart and a vast perspective. Because even if your mind and your emotions recoil and panic, even if they constrict and panic, you don't. You stay open. So no matter what you happen to be feeling right now, you just allow yourself to be content, to be expanded and available, open. And that's the art of conscious contentment. You just allow yourself to be relaxed and expanded and open and content no matter what's happening. And ideally, you will do that enough with enough intensity so that it becomes a habit. So that you start to find in life, no matter what circumstances you walk into, your habit is to fall into an open, receptive, contentment. So much of the problems of the world and so much of the problems we face as individuals are the result of the habit of contracting. So when it's a nice day, when everything's going our way, we're wide open, we're receptive, we have a big perspective, we can see all around. But then something bad happens. And if it's quite bad, everything gets small, right? Our attention gets very, very focused on only whatever it is that we perceive as being a threat. And when our perspective gets that small, we don't tend to make good decisions. And sometimes we make life-altering decisions in those moments that are very not helpful. So for instance, your boss is being a jerk today, and you get really angry, and all you can see is what a jerk they are, and the next thing you know, you quit and walk out the door. And then the next day you go, oh no, actually, it wasn't that bad. And now I have no work. As an example, that's called negative karma. So we want to practice so that our perspective remains vast and open, so that maybe our boss is being a jerk, but whatever, they're being a jerk. And we can still decide to quit, but we'll be deciding it from a big place that's looking at a big picture and making a good choice. Because sometimes quitting your job is the right thing to do. So this now brings me to wanting to talk a little bit about the elevation of consciousness. Because Vinesh he's creating a center for the development of consciousness. And he asked me to place meditation in that context, which is good for me, because that is generally the context I place meditation in. So there are in certain circles a lot of talk about the development of consciousness, or conscious evolution, as it's sometimes spoken of. And the idea is that we go from somehow lower levels of consciousness and we develop to higher levels of consciousness. And we do that as individuals. We also do it, as a culture. Well, what exactly do we mean by the evolution of consciousness? I mean, there's so many people who describe the evolution of consciousness in so many different ways. And most of them have some valuable insight to share. It's not that they're bad. And I've read a lot about different ways of understanding the evolution of consciousness, but the model that I tend to share the most, not because it's the best necessarily, but because it's so simple. It's so simple and it's so intuitive. And I think because it's simple and intuitive, it's very valuable. And it comes from an author and a teacher that many of you may know. His name is David R. Hawking. And David R. Hawkins wrote a book. His first book a long time ago was this book called Power versus Force. This is a fairly difficult book to find now. I think it may be out of print, but he has more recent books that are essentially the same information. So if you look him up, you'll find lots of books. And I think he has a book called Transcending the Levels of Consciousness, which I might have somewhere around here, but that is essentially an updated version of this. I first read Power versus Force, I don't know, it was probably pretty soon after it came out. So 1987 is when it was published. I probably read it 5 years after that. But it has a very elegant model for the development of consciousness. And in the way that Hawkins talks about it, we experience various levels of consciousness all the time. We all know that. I was just talking about that. You experience one level of consciousness when you get a phone call that says your wife was in a car accident. You experience a different level of consciousness when you find out you just won $1 million lottery. Right? Our experience of consciousness is always fluctuating. It's not like we have just one. I have a friend who is a professor at Harvard. He studies childhood education, and his specialty is testing, intelligence testing. And what he did his research on was the fact that, we give children tests, and then we say that those tests have something to do with their consciousness, when in fact, a person's consciousness is constantly shifting. So if you give that same person a test in the morning, you get a different result if you give it to them that night, or the next day, or 2 weeks later. You get a different result if they've just eaten than you will if they're hungry, because consciousness is fluctuating. And so his research was about creating ways of understanding consciousness that took into account the fact that that we aren't just one level of smart. For instance, how much access we have to our native intelligence shifts all the time. So our experience of consciousness shifts all the time, and we all know this. So I want to do a little physical demonstration for you. In David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, the lowest level of consciousness is shame and despair. So, despair is when you've given up, when something's happened that's just made it impossible for you to imagine being able to respond in any way. There's zero energy left. And shame, which is kind of all mixed into similar domains, shame is where you've just done something that you are mortified by. You feel completely unworthy. We've all experienced some degree of that. I mean, I know I have. So what I would ask you to do, and this will take a little bit of courage if you're on screen, but do it anyway, it's okay. It's not that much courage, is adopt a body posture that represents shame. So if you were going to somehow mime shame, what would it look like? And to me, it would look something like this. I see Pat. She's doing something similar to me. If you do shame, it's all crunched up, right? You're trying to hide. You're trying not to be seen. You feel unworthy, right? Despair is similar, except despair, you might just be holding your head. You don't even have the energy to lift up your head. So in the Hawkins scale, that's around the lowest level of energy, the lowest level of consciousness. And what you see in the way that he describes the development of consciousness, the lower levels of consciousness are very contracted and very low energy. They're very self-protected and barely have enough energy to move. So that's how he's looking at consciousness. I find this really valuable. Now, if you start at shame, and go ahead and do that, you're very contracted, very low energy, but then you start to energize. And you start to expand, right? Your arms start to open. Your chest comes out. You look up, right? Not down. You look up. You're vulnerable. You make your body vulnerable because you're strong. You have energy. You're not afraid anymore, right? So that as consciousness develops, it becomes open. It becomes fearless. It becomes willing to be vulnerable. So the lowest level of consciousness is something around shame. And then it goes up. Fear is higher than shame. Fear is a low level of consciousness, but it's higher than shame, because if you fear something bad is going to happen, then at least it hasn't happened yet. Anger is higher than fear in his scale, because if you're angry about something, then you have at least enough self-worth to take a stand. There's a little more energy in it than fear. And above anger is pride. You actually think you're good. But all of those levels are still in what Hawkins would describe as egocentric. It's still all about you, right? Shame is all about you and how unworthy you are. Fear is all about you and what you're afraid is going to happen. Anger is all about you and what's making you mad. Pride is all about you and how great you think you are. The first level that's beyond all about you is courage. Courage is the level of consciousness in which you are willing to extend yourself on behalf of something besides you. That's part of what it means to be courageous. You know, when you see a firefighter, and you see them running into a burning building to save people, you say, oh, they're so courageous. Courageous means willing to sacrifice, willing to risk their own well-being for something they recognize as more important than that. And then the levels keep going up. You know, you go to things like neutrality. Neutrality is actually higher than courage. Neutrality means equanimity. It means things don't rock you anymore. A courageous person can still be very reactive. But when you start to be more equanimous, you're more steady. And then willingness, readiness. That's what I was feeling going to the hospital. It's very powerful. You're ready for anything. Okay, whatever. Maybe, oh, by the way, the ending of the story of my wife, so I don't leave you hanging, is her foot and leg were pretty much just destroyed. And she was cut up, but she was, had a terrible concussion, but she was going to live. That's kind of what we knew that day. Probably never walk again, but live. So that was 10 years ago. And I'm happy to say that she still has some secondary problems, but she walks fine. She doesn't use a cane. She can't run. She can't jump. But if you were to see her walking down the street, you'd never know. So she had a miraculous recovery. That's a whole other story, because meditation played a huge part in that, because mostly what she did during 2 years of multiple operations on her leg was meditate in between. But yes, so it had a good ending, that story. So willingness was what I was feeling going to the hospital. And then as you go up, you start to get into joy. And above joy, you get into, at least in Hawkins' estimation, you start to get into the levels of spiritual enlightenment, spiritual awakening that are even beyond normal human sensibilities, profoundly open places. And in his estimation, we all experience this personally, right? We've all experienced shame, anger, fear, I'm sure willingness, joy, probably enlightenment at different times, that spiritual sense that's beyond anything else. We've all, we go up and down depending on all sorts of factors. And so it's important to realize that we have an immediate temporary experience of consciousness that shifts up and down all the time, up and down, up and down, up and down. But we also have a center of gravity. We have a place that we tend to rest in when life isn't pulling us in some other direction. And this is crucial to understand, because often in spiritual practices or in developmental work, and I think this is a part of what Vinesh is interested in terms of the center of consciousness development, often what people are really wanting is peak experiences. Everybody loves a peak experience. I love peak experiences, right? Peak experiences, those times in meditation or whatever you love, big wave surfing, needlepoint, whatever it is that puts you in a peak experience of just enjoying life, feeling satisfied, feeling good, feeling open. We love those peak experiences. And peak experiences are valuable. But they're not as valuable as your center of gravity. Where is the place where you rest? I sometimes talk about that as the idle in a car. Right? When you hit the gas, car speeds up. But where is the idle? When you don't have your foot on the gas, when nothing's happening, where do you tend to rest? Where's the car resting? Where's the center of gravity? When there's not something good happening that gives you a high peak experience, or something terrible happening that drags you down, where do you rest? Where's your resting place? Unfortunately, in the modern world, most of us tend to rest, or it's more likely than not that the average person tends to rest in anxiety. We live in an incredibly anxious time. Besides doing classes like this, I do some live streaming. And I love doing live streaming because it puts me in contact with a much younger audience. So, I'll sometimes have a couple of hundred people listening, and they're all between probably 20 and 35. The majority of them are between 20 and 35. And I'm amazed at the way they describe their experience of anxiety, how anxious they tend to be. I don't remember people being that anxious when I was that age, but maybe we were, and we just didn't have the word, But young people, I find so many are so anxious. And so that unless life circumstances drags them into something very positive, they tend to rest right in anxiety. That's their ongoing experience. So when we talk about the development of consciousness as an individual, to me, that means increasing our center of gravity, increasing so when I'm talking about meditation, and I'm saying that we become so rooted in this position of conscious contentment, which on the Hawkins scale, I see as, I can't remember the term he uses for it. I think someone just put it up, put a visual up for you. Let's see what I find here. I have this book, so. Yeah, I see it as his level of acceptance, which is, it's not the highest level on the scale, but it's 3 above courage. So it's well into the kind of good zone. And I believe that it's possible for us to create a center of gravity at acceptance. That means a center of gravity that's open and receptive. That's when you get a call that your wife's been in a head-on collision with an 18-wheeler, and you don't find yourself panicking against what's happened. You accept it. You don't like it, but you accept it. This is what's happened. And so because this is what's happened, see, if you can rest in acceptance, the very next thing on the Hawkins scale after acceptance, I got to find it again. Here we go. After acceptance, first there's willingness. And then there's acceptance. You have to be willing to accept this. And then you get to reason. And reason basically means having this vast perspective. So in that case, it meant for me, suddenly I just saw, oh, okay, it's not just about me and my life. It's not even just about me and my wife and our lives. There's also going to be a whole team of doctors and nurses at the hospital working. And they're going to be giving everything to try to do their best. And I don't want to be a hindrance to that. Right? This is like having a perspective that sees more of what's happening. I want to be a positive part of this team, whatever team it is, because I'm going to be a central part of the team. I'm the spouse. And I don't want to be the spouse that's panicked and causing trouble and making everybody's job harder. I want to be the spouse that's as helpful as can be under the circumstances. And then after reason, you feel love in this scale. And that's what I felt at the hospital when I got there. I felt enormous love for my wife. And I felt enormous love for the people. There were like 12 people, doctors and nurses and who know, and they were so concentrated on her well-being. And I just felt so much love for all these people and what they were choosing to do with their lives. And then beyond love, there's joy. And very naturally, I felt very happy. Not happy because my wife was in a car accident, because that was terrible. Not happy because her leg was all smashed up. But I felt joy to see this part of being human, how people were pulling together and sacrificing and focusing and wanting to support the well-being of another. I just felt like, oh, I'm really getting to see a beautiful part of being human. And I felt a lot of joy that that's part of being human. So if your center of gravity is higher in consciousness, you have greater access to those higher levels of consciousness. If you are in anger, if your center of gravity is anger, which means when I hear that my wife is in a car accident, the first thing I am is angry. Angry at, first of all, you get preoccupied with who to be angry at. And it's an accident. So who do you get angry at? You get angry at the other driver. Maybe you get angry at your wife. You find a reason to be angry, because no matter what you're feeling, you always find a reason to justify it. And you get very preoccupied, And those lower levels of consciousness, it's very difficult to access higher levels if that's where your starting point is. So the evolution of consciousness, a big part of it is changing your center of gravity, or what I call your set point. And you do that through practice. Bruce Lee, Power versus Force is the name of the book. And if you look up David Hawkins, you'll find he's got lots of books. So, and to be honest, they're all very similar. And then there's someone's got transcending the levels of consciousness there. Bruce Lee, the famous movie martial artist, has a wonderful quotation that says, during times of duress, we don't tend to rise up to the level of our aspirations. In other words, we don't tend to become the best person we can imagine ourselves to be. He said, we tend to fall to the level of our training. In the modern world, we are literally trained to be anxious, to be afraid. We're getting trained all the time to be afraid and to be anxious. It's not anybody's fault. Nobody's planning on it, but it's kind of built into our system. And so when something happens, when there's duress, we're going to tend to fall into that anxiety and fear. Meditation is a way to retrain your center of gravity. So the place you tend to fall into is equanimity. Acceptance. Calm. And that doesn't mean you're going to just stay there, right? Doesn't mean that I'm going to get to the hospital and just sit in the corner with my legs crossed. Calm. It means I'm available to assess the situation and respond appropriately, to be supportive of my wife in that case, to be attentive to what the doctors were telling me was important. I was ready. I was ready to do my part. People sometimes think that if they have a center of gravity of acceptance, then that means they're going to accept injustice. Not at all. It just means you're going to be in a better position to fight against injustice than someone whose center of gravity is anxiety or fear or anger. Anxiety, fear, and anger is not a great place to fight injustice from. Now, if you start in acceptance, and then you allow yourself to be justly angry, you're in a much stronger position to do good. And these levels of consciousness, they're not just individual, they're also cultural. So there's our individual evolution in consciousness, which I'm saying today, the most important thing to think about is how to raise your center of gravity. And it's also true in a culture. How do we raise the center of gravity of our cultures? And if you think about our culture, it is clear that we could use a little upgrade in the cultural center of gravity. You think? But that's very hard to attain. And as Gandhi said, we have to be the change we want to see in the world. We can't sit with a center of gravity of anger and be angry that everybody else isn't up-leveling their consciousness to equanimity. We have to up-level our center of gravity to equanimity or beyond, or love, or joy, or enlightenment. And then naturally, that will create an upward pull. So in just a few minutes, I'm going to take some questions. We'll sit quietly for a few minutes before that. But I've created the framework now for at least how I'm viewing the evolution of consciousness, the changing of your set point. And this has everything to do, everything I've talked about so far has everything to do with establishing a new habit in consciousness. We have a habit in consciousness which tends toward fear and anxiety, and we want to create a new habit. You know, it's very hard to get rid of old habits. In fact, you usually don't get rid of old habits. What you usually do is you create new, better habits that are stronger than the old habits. So we want to create a new, better habit of acceptance, of conscious contentment, so that we begin to see that, oh, this is where I'm resting now. This is where I'm tending to go in life. And we get there through practice. It takes effort. But that's not the end of the story, because shifting our center of gravity begins to give us a mysterious kind of access to other possibilities in consciousness that are very difficult to access from fear and anxiety. And so I'm going to take questions about everything I've spoken about in a moment. Then we'll have a very short break. When we come back, I want to talk about the second part of the journey, which involves what opens up for us when we've shifted our center of gravity. Where do we go from here? But first, let's just sit together. Again, eyes open or closed, it really doesn't matter. Sitting still is very helpful. And of course, you'll notice, because of the conversation we've been having, well, mostly I've been having, I guess, but because you've been with me in this contemplation, you'll notice your consciousness is probably different now than it was when we first sat, when we first started. When you think about these higher order possibilities together, consciousness does tend to shift. So you might find it easier to be content with exactly the way things are right now than you were when we first got on. Just let yourself be relaxed and open and free with everything exactly the way it is. Doesn't matter what your mind is doing. You can be content anyway. Okay, thank you all very much. I'm leaving just a little bit more time for questions than originally planned, in case there are any.
Thanks,
Hey.
Jeff.
Jeff, this is Bob. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Bob. Yes.
Just for the folks here, I am blind. I really don't know how to raise my hand yet.
Okay.
So that's why I'm butting in. Forgive me for that. But I have a burning idea in my head that I wanted to ask you to help me with making the question to you.
Okay.
That okay? All right. Thank you. So is Hawkins really talking about levels of consciousness or levels of mind? Isn't consciousness really awareness? Doesn't consciousness actually exist beyond the human mind? It's the mind. It's the mind that it is has all those levels.
Yes.
And it's like a filter that consciousness looks through. And then we say, that's our level of consciousness. I don't think that's correct. I think consciousness is always perfect. And the mind and experience and the world creates those levels. The mind, okay?
And
Would you make sense?
You think that I would agree with you?
What's that?
Would you imagine that I would agree with you?
Yes, yes, I can.
I imagine that you would. So listen carefully to the second part and we'll see what you feel like after that.
Oh, I get you. Okay, later.
Yeah,
All right.
See where we go, Bob.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please keep your question short and raise your hand. Jeff, my question to you is, can you please talk about the higher consciousness?
Yeah, we will talk about that in the second part.
Okay, good. So please raise your hand if you have a question and keep the question short.
I see Teresa is there. Looks like Teresa. My eyesight's not that great. And I see Alain as well.
You want to
Yeah,
go,
me-
Alan, because you were first?
Go ahead.
It's okay.
Okay.
We'll do both.
Okay. Fine. Thank you, first of all, for that first part. I've got a question about what you said. I know that I would like to be content with the mind, but I'm not. I'm trying. I know. Let's say my mind say, "Oh, I feel ashamed. You shouldn't have done that. Or you shouldn't have say that," and it's always coming back. Even though I'm trying to go back to the present moment. So in 30 minutes of meditation in the morning, I've got maybe 10 seconds that I'm in the present moment. The rest of the time, it's always my mind coming back. Oh, you have that to do, or you shouldn't have done that, or so. What's really the practice?
Yes. Okay.
To
You
be
ready?
content in the moment.
Yes. So here's the practice, or here's the insight that will help you with the practice, Teresa. Because you just said when you do your morning meditation, you spend maybe 10 seconds in the present moment. And I would say, how long do you meditate for?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. I would say you spend 30 minutes in the present moment. I would that you have never been anywhere but the present moment. And no matter what occurs in consciousness, it happens in the present. right? So your challenge and all of our challenge in meditation isn't that we're not in the present. It's that we don't like the way the present looks.
That's it.
Right? So when you start to say, okay, well, this is just, meditation is ultimately a form of profound maturity. It's saying, you know what? Because I have what you have. I've got all kinds of shameful thoughts about what a loser I am. I've had them my whole life and no matter how much meditation I do, they don't seem to go away, right? But at some point, I just said, okay, well, that's the soundtrack to my movie. I can go back and I can figure out why I have that going on. But the fact is I have it going on. And if meditation was going to get rid of it, it would have gone away by now because I meditated a lot. And so at some point I just said, okay, this is just the deck I was handed, the constant soundtrack of I'm a loser, right? But I don't have to listen to it, and in meditation, it starts to sound to me like a television someone left on in the next room. It's going all the time. I become less and less aware of what it's saying, even though I can't make it stop. So the thing we want to, the key to meditation is not wanting to be anywhere but here, no matter how here is. So even if here is all these thoughts that are bothering you, that's exactly where you want to be, right in reality, with all the
How to be content with all of those thoughts.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the second part, but the thing is, you have to just be content with everything. So you have to be content with all those thoughts. But then you find, I'm not content with all those thoughts. I'm discontent with all those thoughts.
Mhm.
Content with being discontent. Right? If you find a way to be content with being discontent, that's it. You're indestructible. At that point, you're like, bring it on, because nothing can move me now, because I'm okay with being discontent. I'm okay first. But we'll talk more about that in the second half. Teresa, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Next question.
Alon, I think, was next.
Yes. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for bringing in the Hawkins level. I'm familiar with, I read the book a long time ago. And what I noticed as I was listening to you, ever since I had a life-threatening illness 7 years ago, I hear myself say from time to time, I'm not saying I practice it all the time, but I have a deep trust in the process of life. Is that acceptance from your perspective?
Absolutely. That is what I would say that, yes. It's like, even though things might not go good for you, it's a bigger process and you trust that.
Yeah, and that goes along with learning from everything that happens, including the difficult ones.
Absolutely. Most definitely. Thank you, Alon. Very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next question.
Marianne,
Hi, can you hear me?
I hear you fine.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I want to share a little something that just came up and then a question. And the share is, for some reason, when you were talking about
But
just
please
being able
keep it
to,
short. Please
Yeah.
keep it short.
okay, hear the soundtrack of shame. These divine love songs have come in, like divine beloved love songs, like channeled, like the human condition is the first line, and then the divine beloved sings the truth into that. And there's this one line, my housemates are gone, so I was singing last night. Like, when will you risk being mine? I'm already yours, beloved. And there's a little more after that. And then there's this line, this is the one that I thought about. There's nothing in the way, nothing stopping you from flying, nothing in the way but trying.
Beautiful.
Okay, so here's my question. I would love to hear, and I'm a little embarrassed that the content is a little silly, but here it is. I would love to hear you speak of the difference between the practice of no problem in meditation and then the pragmatic of that, like somebody saying, well, gee, Marion, if you were practicing no problem, then have no problem with what the kitchen looks like.
Yeah, right. But that's the difference between, the practice of no problem in meditation is a lot easier. The practice of no problem in life is much more difficult, but I think it can be practiced. But what you can't just say, if you were practicing no problem, you'd be okay with a messy kitchen. First of all, someone who would ask you that is already coming from a place that's very suspicious. I'm very suspicious of. Why would a person assume that? Because practicing no problem means you're okay with the fact that the kitchen's a mess. You're okay with the fact that you want it cleaned. You're okay with the fact that it's going to take energy and time to clean it. And you're okay with the fact that you're going to do that. Or you're okay with the fact that it's a mess. You're okay that it's going to take energy to clean. You're also okay with the fact that you're deciding not to do that right now because you're deciding to do something else. It just means living.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean like, this is what people will say to me. Well, if I'm doing that, then what if I see someone getting beat up on the street?
Right.
I'll say, well, maybe you would be, but I wouldn't be. Maybe you'd be okay if you saw someone getting beat up on the street and you'd be fine to leave them, but I wouldn't be.
Right.
I'd be okay with the fact that I was going to go over there and risk my life to stop it.
Yes.
Okay with that.
Yes.
So
from your center of gravity and ability to respond.
Absolutely.
Like you said about acceptance of injustice. Anyway, so.
The best definition that I have heard for whatever enlightenment might be is that it is the ability to act appropriately in all circumstances. And
Or take the responsibility.
When people want to say, they want to make these assumptions that somehow practicing no problem, being calm and equanimous means being detached in some negative way or not caring. It's totally not true. Look at the people who are the most relaxed, the most autonomous. They care a lot.
Yeah.
You don't see enlightened people hanging around like, you see unenlightened people hanging around drinking beer and eating pizza, watching TV. You don't see enlightened people doing that. Those people that I've seen that are enlightened, you know what they do? They start hospitals, they start orphanages, they start charities. They actually are very busy people doing a lot of stuff. It's just, we need to care more in the world. And we need to stand for the value of caring. And we need to be able to be, okay, I care. It's not cool to care, right? Even the idea of I'm cool kind of means I don't really care. You can't really bother me. Well, I'm not that cool. I care about life. I care about people. And I care about suffering. And that's why I do the things that I do. So
next question, Pauline. Pauline, you unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. I'm a little bit uneasy with English, but what I have discovered is the emotion are the base of the consciousness. If you get apprivoisé, I don't know how to say that in English. When you have an emotion, even if it's fear or anger or whatever, if you if you have the conscious of that emotion, automatically your level of consciousness is getting better.
Absolutely. If you have emotions, but you accept them, you're aware of them. Right? Then a place that accepts and aware is already a higher consciousness than the emotion itself, no matter what the emotion is. It's only when we are embedded in the emotion and I'm angry.
Okay.
That we start to act out of the emotion. So thank you, Pauline. Thank you so much.
Okay, we will take two more questions. Two more questions before the break. Any further questions?
Yeah, I got a couple of things in the chat. They're not questions though. They're beautiful comments. Tomar, nice to see you. Right?
Any further questions?
That's beautiful, Lynn.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what we will do, we will take 2 minutes to reflect what Mr. Chiara has said. Like mind creates most of the problems. We need to go beyond mind. Also, we need to raise our center of gravity. So let us take 2 minutes to reflect on the first part of the talk. Going beyond the mind and raising center of gravity. Good. So before the break, we have been sitting. So I would like to do some small sitting exercise. Okay. Take your hands, stretch your hands, make a fist, open and close fast. Thumb inside, same thing. Make a fist, make circle. Change the direction. Fingers on the shoulder, make a big circle. Change the direction. Hold the hands like this. Go to the left, right, left, right. Good. Take the body to the right, to the left, right, to the left. We will do Y. Make a Y, both hands up. Make W. Make L and T. Y, W, L, hands parallel to the ground, and T. Another time, Y, W, L, T. We use our eyes quite often, get tired on the computer. So we'll do some eyes exercise. Look to the right without moving your head, and look to the left 10 times. Look up, look down without moving your head. Ten times. Now we'll make a big circle with the eyeballs clockwise 10 times. Change the direction. Good. So we can take 5 minutes break, and please come back for the wonderful talk second part. So now it is 10:32. We come back at 10:37. You show me. Well, I know here.
ये है चैट, इसमें जो लिख रहे हैं लोग उसको लिखिए। सॉरी करके बोलिए, बोल दीजिए जब शुरू होता है तो। एंड हम बोले कि जसलीन को अपॉइंट कर लीजिए क्वेश्चन में पूछने के लिए, किसी को एक को अपॉइंट कर लीजिए अगर क्वेश्चन में आए तो। जसलीन होना चाहिए अगर
Mira, there are no questions here.
इफ थैंक्स भी है तो भी ये कीजिए।
You may want to mute yourself, Vinesh.
Okay.
Vinesh, you're muted.
Welcome back. So I was showing the objectives. I was showing you my website for helping people and exploring the spiritual questions, and yoga website, and for developing consciousness. And that is the mission statement. Now, what I was saying, one of my quests is that I feel very kind of strange that we don't have an answer to one of the key questions. And that one of the key questions is, what happens after life? Because it has many, many implications. If there's nothing after life, that is one thing. But if all reincarnation there and judgment of karma is there and other things is there, then it is a very different thing. And as I was saying, that this is in the universe, we get the glimpses, but we don't have the whole picture. I don't know whether we will ever have, but I think we should make an attempt to answer some of these questions. So I will pass it to Jeff if he has any comment on what I said. Jeff?
Well, in relationship to the question of what happens after we die,
Yeah.
I'll defer that discussion till after the second part of this talk.
Okay.
But before I get started, what I wanted to do, because people will sometimes ask me, I teach meditation and awakening, and I write. And in that context, people that I work with will often ask me, what's the most important thing that I can do if I want to awaken, if I want to grow spiritually, if I want to develop consciousness. And I think often they're expecting that I'm going to say meditate, since I teach meditation, but I don't ever say meditate. I think meditation is really important. It's what I teach. It's what's changed my life. So that's why I want to share it. It might change your life, but it's not necessarily everybody's thing. But I always say the most important single thing that you can do if you want to grow spiritually and develop consciousness is stay connected with like-minded people. I think even the Buddha said that. The Buddha, I think there's the Dharma, which is the teaching. There's the Buddha, the teacher, and the Sangha, which is the community. Those are the three ingredients that lead to growth. And when asked, the Buddha said the Sangha is the most important of those, the community. And that's been my experience, that it's very difficult to do this on your own. It's possible, it happens for some people, but it's difficult. It's incredibly valuable to have the support of like-minded others. And since we're all here today together, and there's quite a few of us, over 100 at this point.
Yeah.
What I would like to do is ask you, if you can, to turn on your video. I realize some of you might be, who knows, in the tub. Don't turn on your video if that's the case. But if you can, and you don't mind, turn on your video, because I want to scroll through my screens so I can just kind of look and see you. And I suggest you might want to do the same, because we aren't doing this alone. We're actually doing it with a lot of other people. And it can be very strengthening to see. So I'm going to just scroll through. The people on my front screen I've been seeing for quite a while. So I'm going to look through my second screen. see the various people that I might know. So nice to see you all. Oh, that's where Carmela went. She snuck off to the second screen. I see. Deborah's here. Deb is here. It's nice. Amy, I don't think I've seen you for a while. It's nice to see you. Bonnie, of course. Chandra, always a pleasure. Some new faces I don't know, of course, which is always lovely. Nice to see you all. Young Kim. And Graham, for whom I think it must be the middle of the night. But I think there was also a Robin here from Australia, so it must be the middle of her night too. I think. Or at least getting late. So nice to see you all. Thank you all for coming. I know Vinesh is wanting to create community. I have a lot of respect and admiration for people who do that. I've been developing spiritual community, living in spiritual community, gathering spiritual community, supporting spiritual community for the past nearly 30 years. And it takes a lot of effort, but it's important. You know, we need the structures to be in place so that we are able to be part of a group of like-minded others, kindred spirits. And the internet is so amazing because it allows us to do this without having to, you know, when I first got very serious about spiritual community, it was 1992. And there was technically an internet. I was an engineer at the time, so I knew the internet existed, but you know, it didn't have pictures for one thing. And it tended to have, you know, the green screen with the blinking square that would put the letters in, you know, and you could kind of converse with fellow scientists and pick up papers online and stuff. But there was nothing like this available. So, you know, in those days, community meant, which is what I did, it meant picking up, leaving your job, leaving your location, and moving into an actual physical community with people. And it's so nice that now we have the internet, which allows us to connect with other people from wherever we are. And I know we have people in various places around the world here today. So first of all, thank you all for being here so much. Thank you for your energy and your attention and your care. And I appreciate very much that you've made the effort to be here. And so with that, let's begin. You know, what I like to call the second half of the journey. So when our journey with meditation begins, it tends to be about practice. It could be my practice, the practice of conscious contentment. It could be mindfulness practice. It could be some other form of meditation. There's certainly plenty of them. And many of them, if not most of them, are valuable and powerful. But generally they start with practice. And practice means you're doing something and trying to get good at it, right? You practice the piano so that someday you'll really be able to play the piano well. So in the same way, you practice meditation so that someday you will be able to meditate well. When we're practicing that way, this is usually how it goes. I'm sitting in meditation. This is a little bit what, I can't remember her name, might have been Teresa, said earlier. You're sitting in meditation. And the instruction you're following is the Art of Conscious Contentment, which means be content with whatever you find. Almost invariably, when you start this practice, what it means to you to be content is somehow linked to a particular feeling experience. Like this is the, like I think it was Teresa, she was saying, to her, it had to do with being in the present moment. It had to do with being present. So whenever she saw herself getting carried away by anger or frustration, she'd be not in the present moment. She'd be not content with the way things are, and she'd have to bring herself back. For others of us, it might be a feeling experience of contentment, some kind of relaxed experience in our body and our mind, for instance. And so when we sit, okay, I'm going to practice conscious contentment. We breathe easy. We let our minds relax. But then at some point we notice, we're starting to think about that situation at work that's bothering us, and our body is more tense and our mind is more agitated. And I'm not meditating. And we come back. Come back. Breathe easy. Be content. Don't make a problem out of anything. Good. I'm back. I'm meditating again. Until we remember that we're over here thinking about what I'm going to cook for dinner. And then we have that little moment of, I'm not meditating anymore. Back. Relax. Be content. This is where Teresa, I think it was Teresa, and if I got your name wrong, I'm sorry, but I think it was Teresa. Teresa was saying she maybe has 10 seconds of that. And how much of that kind of experience of presence you have in any given meditation, it'll change from meditation to meditation. Some meditations are easier than others. Sometimes a day are easier than others. But invariably, when you start a meditation practice, it's all about coming back. It's all about meditating, getting lost in thought, coming back, getting lost over here, coming back, getting lost over here, coming back. And so the practice is a constant coming back to being centered, to being consciously content, to being present. However it is that you define it in your mind, that's what the practice is. Even for a well-seasoned meditator, I mean, maybe not, a yogi in the Himalayas who's been sitting for the last 30 years, kind of nonstop all day long. But, for anybody who's living a normal life, even if they're meditating a lot, how much time you spend actually present is probably like, I don't know, a minute or two, if you're lucky, before you're off into the next thing or off into the other thing. So that means that your meditation is going to be a constant bringing yourself back, bringing yourself back, bringing yourself back, and maybe, it's every 10 seconds, if your mind is more agitated. So then meditation becomes exhausting. And a lot of people just quit at that point. They just go, this is crazy. This is more exhausting than my normal life. If I wanted to be this tense, I could just live my life. I don't have to meditate for it. And then they quit, but they quit too soon, unfortunately. And a lot of people will tell me that. They'll say, I used to meditate, but I stopped because I couldn't do it. And I know if they say they couldn't do it, what they're talking about is being present. The other thing that happens, of course, is if you fly off every minute or two, right, that's going to happen. Let's say you meditate for an hour and you're flying off every minute or two, bring yourself back. And maybe you're staying back and then gone again, then gone again, then gone again. That means that when the final bell rings and your meditation ends, if you're lucky, you've been present for 2 minutes. That would be extreme, to be honest. Maybe you've been present for 30 seconds and it's always going to be that way because that's what happens. And then you're going to go, oh, I just got started and now it's over. We always feel like we just got started and then it ends. But the problem is we're constantly restarting. That's why it always feels like it just got started. It doesn't matter if you meditate for a half hour or an hour or 10 minutes or 2 hours. It's always going to feel at the end like you're just getting started because the last time you found yourself from being lost in thought was always going to be a minute or so ago. So again, people quit. They just say, it's not working for me. But still, not everybody quits. Thank God. I didn't quit. A lot of people don't quit. So you keep going and you do get better at it. And the way you get better at it is you get less bothered by the fact that you get lost in thought. Initially, it feels very bothersome. It feels very much like a failure. But eventually, it feels less bothersome. And you can relax more about it, which means, you still get lost in thought, but now you don't have that same sense of, oh, I'm lost in thought. Oh my God, I got to get back. It just kind of, oh, lost in thought. Oh, look at that. Oh, happened again. It's much easier then. And you can stay much more relaxed. You're kind of still doing it though. You're still going out, coming back, going out, coming back. But no matter how you define it, if you're going out, coming back, going out, coming back, you may define the coming back as being present, the way Teresa was defining it. You may find it as being content, the way that I tend to talk about it, or having no problem. Or if you're doing mindfulness, coming back might mean coming back to the breath. Or if you're doing a visualization, coming back to the visualization, or a mantra. If you're doing a mantra, there's all kinds of different practices you might be doing. But it's always coming back, coming back, coming back. But if you really want to do the practice of conscious contentment, which means the practice of being okay with the way things are, it means you have to be equally okay with being lost in thought as you are with being present. You see, as long as there's any state of consciousness that is preferable to you than others, you're not really practicing conscious contentment. You're doing something else. And I've been teaching this particular form of meditation for at least 20 years. And I know that the vast majority of people that I work with aren't actually doing the practice that I'm teaching. They're doing their own practice, and everyone's got their own version of the practice, So the practice, they might be doing the practice of staying present, which I never said stay present. I never said stay present and be content with being present. I just said be content no matter what's happening, which includes being present. It includes being lost. Both of those are equally whatever's happening. But most people have something that they define as the preferable state, like being present or feeling content, or even just remembering that you're meditating. This is like the big sin of meditation. People will forget that they're meditating. The funny thing is, in the Advaita Vedanta tradition of which I am a part, forgetting that you're meditating is part of the goal. That's part of the whole point, is to forget yourself in the practice. But people will keep riveting themselves back to remembering. So the way that works is you're doing whatever you think you're doing in meditation, being present. You're meditating, you're sitting there, meditating. Oh yeah, I've got rice in the cabinet, and I could put that together with a little of that sauce I made the other day, and maybe I have to go. I'm not. I forgot I was meditating. I started thinking about dinner. Oh, horrible! meditating, meditating. And so the practice becomes remember that you're meditating, which I never said remember that you're meditating. I said be content no matter what's happening, which means you're content if you're remembering that you're meditating. You're content if you just realized that you've been thinking about having dinner. Neither of those is preferable to the other. Because the goal is not to have any particular experience, at least in the way that I teach meditation. The goal is to be okay no matter what your experience is. The goal of this meditation is not to have a particular experience. The goal is to be free from needing your experience to be any particular way, literally any particular way. And you're practicing it. And at some point, when your practice develops, you start practicing being okay, no matter what happens. And then you notice something very interesting about, you start to see how things really work, right? If you're busy coming back to remembering, you're not really seeing how things are actually working because you're too busy coming back all the time. But if you stop being busy with that and you just watch, you'll see, oh, isn't this interesting? I'm totally present to meditating. And then suddenly I realize that I've been thinking for 2 minutes about my dinner. Now, normally I would bring myself back to being present and I'm meditating. But at a later stage in your practice, you realize, well, if I just remembered that I was thinking about something, then I'm already back. So there's literally nothing to do. Where am I going to go? You know, it's like I was meditating, being present, knowing that I was here, and suddenly I realize that I've been thinking something else. And the habit is to think we need to come back, but you actually haven't gone anywhere. You were just sitting here, knowing that you were meditating. Then you got captured in a thought, and then the thought released, and you're still here. There's nowhere to go back to. You don't go anywhere on the inside. You never go anywhere on the inside. And you start, if you relax and you allow yourself to just be with the experience of being human. And the experience of being human is exactly the experience of being present to sort of your physical body, your surroundings, be present to the idea that you're meditating, know what you're doing, get completely absorbed in some thought or other, or a feeling or other. Come back to the realizing you're here, get absorbed in the next thing, come back. I often say it's like flying a plane on a cloudy day. And the clouds are thoughts. And when we first start meditating, we feel like, oh, I don't want to be in any clouds. I always want to be in clear skies. So every time you see a cloud, you have to, I got to get around the cloud. I don't want to go through it. I don't want to forget that I'm meditating. So, you know, it's very hard to fly that way, around the clouds. They're always changing, and they're always another one, and you're always, but eventually, you know, what you want is for all the clouds to go away. God, I wish my mind would just go away. Then I wouldn't have this problem. Because if it was just a perfectly clear sky, then you could just fly straight, right through the clear sky. But if you are no longer making a problem out of getting lost in thought, if you become content with the fact that you're human and humans get lost in thought, it literally is the way it is. Then you can fly straight anyway. You just fly right through the clouds. You go into a thought, you get totally lost in it, you pop out the other side. And you see, well, that's just how life works. That's how human consciousness works. We're kind of aware and present and knowing what we're doing, and then we get lost in a thought, and then we remember where we are, and you just let it happen. You don't try to make it be different. And then meditation becomes so easy. because you're not doing anything, right? Suddenly you realize, oh, I don't have to do anything. I can just let this happen. And then you remember, oh, the instructions are don't do anything. This is what it means to not do anything. It means just living, just being, however it unfolds. It all gets so simple. Meditation is a joy then. And the only thing you have to deal with is whatever part of you wants to have a good meditation. This is like bullshit alert. There is no good meditation. Meditation is being. It's all equally good. You can be having the most frustrating inner experience or the most blissful inner experience. Neither one of those is a better meditation than the other. As long as you're relaxed about it, you're meditating. And if you're not relaxed about it, then you're not meditating. So there's either meditation or not meditation. There's no good meditations. It's very interesting to ask people. I do this all the time. It's kind of a trick when I'm teaching meditation classes. I ask people, how was your meditation? It's a trick question because really the answer should be, shut up, Jeff, and don't ask that stupid question. But instead, people will either tend to say, oh, I had a really bad meditation. No, this was really hard, implying it was bad. Or they'll say, oh, yeah, this is a great one. And then you ask them, what made it good? What made it bad? Usually, good means whatever was happening in my mind I liked. Bad means whatever was happening in my mind I didn't like, right? So yes, we have personal preferences for what we prefer. But the fact that our mind is giving us what we like does not make that a better meditation. And it certainly doesn't make it, as I've already said, a more valuable meditation. Because to me, the most valuable meditations are the hard ones where you remain content and calm anyway. When you get really good at that, you have kind of come to the place of what I would call, if you're really good at that, the only thing you have to contend with is the critical part of your mind that says, no, that's not really meditation. Real meditation is when you have a blissful Buddha smile and your insides are just like a blossoming field of beautiful flowers all the time, tickling you with delight. This is like the experience people want. They see the Buddha with his smile on. Who knows what he was actually experiencing? He was probably horribly angry that day, but we just assumed that he was having the tickling blossoming of flowers on his interior, so that it was just living in blissful delight. But if you can come to the place where it's all okay with you, and all you do is sit, part of you will say, well, why meditate? And it's a very good question. I think the reason I meditate is two reasons. One, because I think that's a habit that continually needs to be reinforced. And two, because I love it. I love to sit there and just be easeful. And three, this is like, if you want to get into a more theological position, three, I think meditating in this way is a wonderful way to worship divinity. Because when I'm completely content with the way things are, to me, that's me saying to the divine, I am happy with whatever you give me. I'm not here to get something for myself. I'm just here to be with you. However you want to show up for me is perfect for me. I don't know a better way to love the divine than to be that open to all of her graces, even the challenges. And so I find good reason to meditate. But that's as far as you can go in meditation. on your own steam. There's nothing more that you can do, right? Because meditation is just not doing anything. So if you get good at not doing anything, that's it. There's nothing else you could do by definition, because anything else you do would be doing something. And doing something is not meditation. So you get to the place where you are not doing anything and you're just being with what is, period. End of story. No more hope for anything more that's going to come out of your effort. You've done it all. And you just rest. And a very interesting thing happens when you just come to that place where you stop doing anything in meditation, you just rest and be done. Now you're not doing anything anymore. You're finished. You're perfectly content with the way things are. It's over. And guess what happens? Nothing changes. This is the big cosmic joke. All of your tendencies to want to control things and change things continue to happen. All of the ways that you maneuver and try and fly in and out of clouds continue to happen. It's all, and so at first you think, oh my God, I'm blowing it. But then you realize, oh, I was never doing any of that in the first place. All that stuff that I thought was me doing things was always just stuff happening. It was always just the unfolding of kind of karmic momentum and psychological patterns and habits. The perpetuation of certain belief systems. I thought it was all me in there, making choices and doing things, but none of it was ever me. It was all just happening. I mean, that is amazing. Literally, your whole life, you're like going, doing, going, doing, and you want to stop, and finally you find a way to stop, and you realize all the going, doing continues, and you realize it was never me. And when you realize it was never you, you realize, oh, I thought I was the one doing all this. But I was just always the one that was watching it happen. And part of what I was watching happen was an idea of being me doing all these things that I thought was the real me. But that was never the real me. I was always the awareness that was aware of everything. And this gets back to Bob's earlier question and what Vinesh was talking about. This kind of realization you can't do. You can't, I'm telling you this, I'm sure it makes sense to many of you. Some of you have probably even experienced it. But just knowing that it's true isn't the same thing as actually falling into it. So in the Hindu tradition of Advaita Vedanta, which Linda is just, the Hindu tradition of Advaita Vedanta in the lineage of Ramana Maharshi, which is the one that I worked in, the question that he asks always is, who am I? Which Linda just put in our chat. So once you take practice as far as you can go, and you learn how to do nothing, you surrender. There is only one spiritual practice in the end. There's a lot of spiritual practices that are leading to the end, right? Prayer, meditation of a million different types, prayer of a million different types, physical practices like prostrations or yoga, or there's so many practices. But in the end, if you're going to follow it all the way to the end, in the end, they all converge and they meet in the same exact place. The only practice ultimately that there is, which is surrender. There is no other practice. In the end, there's just surrender. There's letting go. There's giving up control. The proverbial thy will, not my will, be done. So if you get to the point where you actually let go and you stop doing anything, and then you realize that the doing continues and that it was never you, then if you're lucky and if you're blessed with grace, you'll realize that you were always the awareness that is aware. Even when you were angry, even when you were lost in anger, you were never angry and you were never lost in anger. You were aware of anger. You were aware of the experience of being lost in anger, and you were mistakenly identified with that. But that was never who you were. You were always the awareness that is aware. So I'm going to tell you a story that those of you who know me have heard probably too many times, so bear with me, but it's just too instructive not to mention for those who haven't heard it. I always had a hard time sleeping in meditation. Actually, that's a lie. I never had a hard time sleeping in meditation. It was always easy for me to sleep in meditation. That was the problem. And I was always trying to stay awake. People ask me now all the time, what do I do about sleep in meditation? And I tell them not to worry about it. It's the worst thing that can happen. You fall asleep, you know. The world's not going to end because you fell asleep in meditation. But I used to spend a lot of time forcing myself to be awake. And one day when I was meditating on a retreat, forcing myself to be awake was really one of these awful moments where my eyes were watering and my body hurt. And I just was so tired. I wanted to just nod off. Please let me nod off. Please, please. I was practically begging God for a break. And suddenly this little voice in my mind said, you're not tired. And for some reason, hearing that little voice made me realize I wasn't tired, actually. I was aware of the inside of a very tired body. But the awareness that was aware of the inside of the very tired body was itself not tired at all. And then my body was still exhausted. You know, my eyes were still, my head still hurt, but I was not exhausted anymore. I was amazed. I was like, oh my God, look at what a tired body looks like. That's amazing. I used to think that was me being tired, but I'm not tired. I'm just here looking at this. And I realized I'd never been tired. I didn't even know what being tired would mean as awareness. Awareness was just the awareness that's tired, and it's just as aware of being tired as it is of being awake or being excited. There's no difference. Awareness is always aware, period, by definition. All it is awareness. I realized it's like a light switch that has no on off and it has no dimmer. It's always just aware, period. But it happens to be shining through an embodied experience and identified with what happens in the embodied experience. And so it thinks it's less aware or it's tired, but it never is. So I was amazed. I was just, and oh my God, sitting in meditation. First of all, I didn't know what sitting in meditation even meant at that point. But whatever it meant, it was really fun. Just sort of being, and I thought, oh, this is what it means to be out of your mind. I am way out of my mind now. I am just floating around in no place, watching the inside of a tired body. And then suddenly the bell rang, bing, meditation's over. And I watched myself stand up, but I didn't stand up. I just watched standing up. I watched myself walk across the room, but I didn't walk across the room. I was exactly in the same place, just watching it happen. And I realized I've never gone anywhere. I've always just been a free-floating consciousness existing in the center of the universe that happened to be looking at sort of a movie of embodiment. And then when I got home that night and I went to bed, I just watched my body fall asleep. And I just was the awareness that was aware of a body falling asleep. And it just went numb. And it was just there, stuck kind of in the semi-paralysis. And I thought, oh, it fell asleep. And I'm still awake. And then I thought, this is awesome. And then gradually I saw my mind turning off. It was getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. The thoughts were getting quieter and quieter and quieter. And eventually there was nothing, just blackness. But I was still there. I was just floating in blackness. And to say that I was floating in blackness is already too many words, because there was no blackness. It's just the way I can describe it. There was nothing. You know, I could say emptiness, but emptiness is also too many words, because any word I use, this is why in some spiritual traditions, they say you shouldn't use names for God, because any name you use is going to label a something, and God is not a something. So in the same way, this emptiness is not a something. It's not a blackness. It's not space. It's not anything. It's not an emptiness. But I was there. Linda's saying I can get some water. I will. Hang on. Thank you, Linda. That's probably a good idea. It's not because I'm totally self-sacrificing. I just get so into what I'm saying, I forget. Like, I feel like my leg could fall off, and I'm like, oh shit, my leg fell off. Oh well, let's keep going. Some things are more important than legs. So it was just nothingness left. And then a dream came, pop, and I was back in a gas station. And a scene was playing out. And then the dream ended. Bam, it's like someone turned the light out. Emptiness. And that just went on all night. Every now and again, a dream popped in, and then emptiness, and then a dream, and then emptiness. But I was just watching it all. And then in the morning, I heard the alarm go off, and I felt my body like quiver and boom, come to life. It's like, oh shit, I'm awake now. It was literally like, oh, there goes the body. Now it's moving. Oh, now it's going to go get breakfast. And I wasn't doing any of it. And I wasn't moving. I was just aware of what was happening. And this lasted for 3 nights. Well, and then the 4th night, I was really starting to panic that I was going crazy. And maybe because I was panicking, I actually lost consciousness that night and fell asleep the old-fashioned way. You know, the way where you're awake and then you open your eyes and it's morning and you don't know what happened in between. That's the old way of falling asleep, not the way where you just watch the whole thing unfold all night. But this gets to Vanesh's question, which is answered for me. But I never want anyone to take my word for anything. I know where I go, where I'm going to go when this body drops. I'm going to be an awareness, aware. That's where I was before this body appeared. I was an awareness, aware. And then this body and this whole lifetime, whoa, grabbed me and unfolded. And right now, while I'm talking to you, I'm still an awareness that's aware. I'm the awareness that's aware of this whole conversation unflowing through this mind and body. I'm not doing this. I mean, I just can't possibly give myself credit for knowing how to create a body that could speak and think and do all this is all just happening. I seem to be somewhat involved in the process, but I mean, I couldn't possibly reproduce this. I couldn't make another one. This was given to me. This body, this mind, the whole thing. Eternal meditation after death. I'm not totally sure, Linda. I believe personally that this has not been my only lifetime. I believe I've lived many lifetimes in many different planes of existence, and I will live many more. That part I can't be completely sure of, but I'm not very concerned about it. It makes sense to me. What I feel absolutely certain about is that I was a free-floating awareness before this body appeared. I am that now, and I will be that again when this body disappears. See, now we enter into the realm of realization. See, in the way that Ramana Maharshi talked about it, he made a very nice distinction. The first level of practice is attainment. And attainment has to do with learning to be consciously content no matter what's happening and developing a strong habit of that, which will raise your center of gravity to a higher place. And that's as far as you can go on your own. That's the surrender. But then if you're lucky, realization will dawn in one form or another. And there's many, many, many different forms. I just described one to you, but that's one kind of breakthrough experience. And there can be others. And then the journey continues. Hang on one second. I've got some. Okay, there we go. Yes, Chandra, being in the body is amazing. So much can happen in this embodiment. Being alive, having the privilege of experiencing embodied existence is a miracle. We're all so lucky to be here. In spite of the fact that it's often challenging. See, when you experience the kind of realization of pure consciousness, eternal awareness, what is sometimes referred to as your true self, the awareness that is aware. It's hard for you to even remember how you used to have a problem with meditation. Like you start to go, what did I think I was doing when I was meditating? That wasn't this. Since this is clearly the only thing that's ever been happening, what did I think was happening in meditation? It's all a matter of falsely identifying with some small, limited part of yourself and thinking that's all there is. But when you realize who you are in totality, it all kind of fits into place. Now, does that mean, now this is very interesting, does that mean that we don't still want to change our center of gravity? No. Development continues. I've had a very powerful, not just that experience I talked to you about, many, many experiences over years that have left me very comfortably certain of who I really am. It allows me to teach meditation in a way that I think is, that many people at least find very powerful and unusual. I am far from a perfect individual. I still have all kinds of ways that I need to grow. Powerful awakening experiences don't make you perfect. In some ways, they don't actually touch who you are on earth. I do courses, I have a counselor, I have all kinds of things that help me grow. I don't have any problem with the fact that I'm not perfect. I don't have any problem with being human. Human is not perfect. I haven't yet met a perfect human. I've met a lot of humans who are very, very awake and very enlightened. I haven't met one that's perfect. I'm not even sure I know what perfect would be. But I feel willing. I know that there are things about myself that I do not see, that it would be really good if I did see. And so I have to do work like everybody else in the world has to do work. I think I'm a little bit better patient for a therapist because I'm a little less resistant. I'm a little less hooked on the idea that I'm already perfect. I'm not shocked generally when I see myself doing things that are stupid. That's a big hindrance to development, is when we secretly think we're perfect. No one would admit that they're perfect. Everybody would, if you said, do you think you're perfect? Everyone says, no, I'm not perfect. But then when someone does something wrong, they go, no, I couldn't have done that. Why couldn't you have done that? Are you too perfect to have done that? Because you actually just did it. So often, emotionally, we're invested in the idea of being perfect. So I'm just saying this because it's sometimes believed that deep awakening experiences make you perfect. And there may be. They say Ramana was perfect. I never met him. He certainly was incredibly powerful. I mean, that may be a possibility. It's just nothing I'm ever going to assume about myself. And I would recommend nobody assume they're perfect. There's not that much harm if you assume you're imperfect and then later you find out you were perfect. I mean, no one's going to kill you for that. But you can do a lot of damage if you think you're perfect and you're not. Believe me, I've seen that show. It has a bad ending. So that is everything that I wanted to share, from meditation as a practice that you can get better and better at, and you can attain a habit of being equanimous and open and receptive. And that can become your new center of gravity. And if you're lucky, the grace of realization will dawn on you, and you will fall into a deeper place in yourself. And you will realize that you were always the awareness that is aware. And that will change everything. So what we'll do is we'll just meditate together, just sit quietly. Lynn says, is it really just luck? From your point of view, it's just luck. There may be all kinds of karmic reasons why these things happen. I'll go into that question, Lynn, after we sit. Okay, everyone, thank you very much. And Vinesh, we can finish with a few questions if you like.
So I would like to thank Jeff. My first question is, besides meditation, would you like to comment some other ways to raise the consciousness?
Well, there's many ways, many things that help. Study of all kinds, both of philosophies and higher ideas and spiritual texts, study and understanding. There's physical practices, because we're today speaking more about consciousness, but we're not just conscious beings, we're also physical beings and energetic beings. And there's lots of different practices that open up the energies of the body and open us to greater energetic movement and unblock things energetically and in the body. And of course, the more traditional approaches like psychotherapy, the more modern approaches like psychotherapy are very valuable, can be very valuable to people. So there's so many different ways. Ken Wilber's original book called The Spectrum of Consciousness kind of maps out the journey from the ground to enlightenment and gives examples of all the different kinds of modalities that help along the way. And some are aimed at certain places and certain kinds of blocks, and others at other ones. But yeah, so there's a few, Vinesh, and of course there are more.
Jeff, would you agree with my comment that if everybody realize that most of it is illusion and there is awareness, only awareness, then the world will be very different?
Absolutely, I would agree with that. I'm not 100% sure the world would still be here. The world may have served its purpose then, and we might have moved on to whatever's next. But yes, if we were still here, we would definitely live in a different world.
Now we are open to questions. Please raise your hand and unmute yourself.
So go ahead, Brian, you were first, and then we will get Linda.
Keep your question short, please, so we can get as many questions as possible. Brian, go ahead.
Okay, there, I managed to unmute. Well, thank you very much. And I have a few comments that lead to a question. I'll be brief and succinct with it. First of all, my personal belief is that we have to make peace with paradox, because we're in a paradoxical universe. And so I want to just make a comment about a few terms that we're using. I am not this, I am this. This is an illusion. I actually don't agree. I believe in both. So yes, it's true. We are way greater awareness, this awareness that's aware, and that's who we are. But yet we are also in this body. And I take the approach that it's very important that we're here. We're here for a reason, because there's been maybe a choice of, I believe in a collective consciousness. I also believe in a total unified consciousness beyond space and time. If we imagine the beginning of the universe and then what comes before, we have nothingness. I believe that there is nothingness, but again, paradox, there's something, consciousness. I believe consciousness is everything. So it's the eternal moment existing when there's no time and space. It's that just pure awareness that's always omnipresent. And it's also present in everything that's in existence in the universe. There's a consciousness to everything, and there's a collective consciousness to everything. And even to take our universe, it's so well beyond our personal consciousness as this little individual, as a human being, but yet we have it. And anyway, my question then is, Jeff, I found it amazing from your experience of observing yourself going to sleep and realizing that there's just awareness and you couldn't even describe it. I believe you were in touch with that concept that I was just describing, when there's no time, no space, only consciousness, and that's all there is, and that's eternal. And yet, at the same time, you were still that same individual. That's you that was individually aware that you're aware with this greater awareness. So it gets very, very interesting. My last comment, and I'll leave it to the question, is that I believe, therefore, that the purpose to meditate, sure, to have this higher awareness and to reach these states, but as you described it, Jeff, ultimately it's to be at peace with doing nothing, and that's great. At the same time, back to the paradox, we're here for a limited amount of time being alive, and I believe there's lots of things we have to do, especially in this day and time, to create change. So your comments on any of that?
You got me. In my zeal, I often speak in ways that I probably shouldn't. And I get so excited about what I want to convey that I forget to. Anyway, what do? You just do. Here's the thing. In terms of what your fundamental point is about, I am so busy doing stuff to change the world. I wrote my first book in 2012. I've written 27 since. I teach nonstop. I'd be teaching all over the world right now, except I can't. I'm online constantly. There's no way in which I am an advocate of not doing anything in the world. I'm an advocate of being okay with the fact that my life has to be totally surrendered to the needs of these times. I don't have a life of my own here. I just have a life of service. And that's kind of what this ends up being. Surrender to God and service is sort of what is. And so I would agree with you. I think you're totally right. This is an incredibly important opportunity that we have here. None of us are perfect, but we all have so much more to give. And I'm constantly seeing ways in which I hold back, and I could give more, and I could do more. And I'm not talking about, the need for self-care. I'm talking about my own inner tendency towards being selfish and not wanting to extend myself. So it's a complicated bag here. All I want is to support people to be liberated so that they can devote their lives to making the biggest, best possible impact they can in the world. And so today I was speaking about a very narrow part of what I often speak about because of the context that Vinesh asked for. I always see everything that I talked about today as the ground for an incredibly inspired, creative life. Most of the time when I'm teaching about higher creativity and how can we use our freedom to become what I call an artist of possibility, which means a person who's constantly creating new possibilities for the world, tirelessly, selflessly, and without reservation. So I think you and I are probably much more on the same wavelength than this talk may have revealed, my friend. Thank you, Brian.
Jeff, we have other questions. Linda?
Hello, Linda.
Hi. Thank you so much for this talk. This was, well, there are no words right now. It was just very, very amazing. I have two questions. What are visions in meditation? What's happening? Is it the subconscious mind that's kicking in? I have had visions in meditation.
Yes.
What are those?
Well, this is my personal opinion. I'm actually just finishing a book exactly on this topic.
Really?
Yes. It's called The Path of Spiritual Breakthrough, but it won't be out for a few months. But what I believe is that those visions are they're possibilities. And the way I've lived and the way that I advocate is those possibilities, those visions become something depending on how we relate to them. We're not passive in this process of awakening. This is not just a vision of the way things are that we just have to accept. This is a possibility for the way things could be that we can live into if we choose to. And so there's always an aspect of co-creative participation on the path.
Thank you.
Thank
I'll be keeping my eye open for that book.
Okay, very good.
I have another question.
Linda, keep it to one question, please. Lynn?
This one's really important.
Okay, go ahead.
It's about Kundalini. What's the purpose of the awakened Kundalini in consciousness?
Well, Kundalini, as again, these are my opinions, so I'm just going to share them as if they're true, but, take them with a grain of salt. Kundalini is the energy of the cosmos. It is the ultimate energy of which we are alive, right? And the Kundalini awakening is what occurs when the various constraints within us, emotional, psycho-emotional constraints, get either gradually or in some instances in one big burst blown open so that we become a greater channel for cosmic energy.
Okay.
A part of what we are. Ultimately, this cosmic energy and consciousness are flip sides of a coin. You can't have one without the other. They're two aspects of one thing.
So if I understand correctly, what you're saying is that Kundalini actually helps consciousness blossom, in other words.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They work hand in hand.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me ask the second question, Vinesh.
Okay, Lynn Gosbell, unmute yourself, please.
Yeah. I was just going to repeat the question I asked you. Is it really just luck?
Well, okay, so I'm glad we're talking about it. This is a very good question. How do I know if it's really just luck? It could be all kinds of things. It could be total destiny, right? There could be a higher mind that knows that X person is going to have this experience on this day at 3:22 and 6 seconds under these circumstances. It could be completely, but I don't know that. So from my point of view, it's just luck. And my question would be around that question is, what does it matter? What if we found out that it was destiny? How would that change anything? I mean, there's still nothing you can do about it. And if it's just luck, there's nothing you can do about it. So the end game answer is always going to be do nothing. So I don't know if it's just luck or if it's karma or if it's destiny. I have no way of knowing, but I just relate to it as the most important thing. The thing that I feel clear about is I can't make it happen. So I just surrender and it happens or it doesn't. The beautiful thing is if you're free, it doesn't matter to you anymore because you're okay anyway. You're no longer needing even to be enlightened to be okay because you're already okay. So thank you, Lynn. That's a great question.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good.
Debbie, unmute yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinesh. Thanks for doing this. Jeff, great to see you. Thank
Hi,
you.
Deb. Nice to see you.
You too. So I have a very basic question, and it's kind of funny for me going so basic to, as you mentioned about changing and raising the set points to be less reactive in our daily lives. We would think when we would say to our children, count to 10 before you react or take a breath. So our guidance is this meditation to then shift over into our daily lives. And much like in meditation, where we're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not meditating, I bring myself back. In my daily life, if I'm reactive, when I'm then become aware, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I'm reactive. I get that, bringing back. And then of course there's that shame even that you mentioned. How would you, in the most rudiment of ways, basic of ways, how would you guide us to that moment of I guess, that raised level in those states?
Well, I guess, I think what's really important is that you have to learn to, you need to have a lot of space around yourself and allow yourself to be human, which means sometimes being reactive and allowing that to be okay. Maybe not what you want, but not shameful. It's very hard to change anything from shame, right? That's a very low level of consciousness. So you want to get to a place where it's like, okay, I'm human, I'm reactive sometimes. And from there, change becomes possible. In terms of meditation, it's not that we want to take what we do in meditation and apply it to life so much as the effort we make in meditation will, over time, shift our center of gravity, and then we'll notice it showing up in life. I'm sure you've already noticed it showing up in life. And if you keep doing it, it will keep showing up. So yeah, I would say give yourself a break.
Yeah. I
Accept,
set the bar high, which is why, and it's not like shame. It's more like it's disappointment. But you know, of course, there's shame in there because it is such a high bar.
that's right. And our high bars create more problems for us than good, I think, ultimately, especially for decent people. You know, I mean, if you're not a decent person, having a good high bar is probably a good idea. But, you know, the kind of people that are going to show up here, you know, we're not talking about, you know, horrendous individuals. You know, these are people that would probably do better giving themselves a break. You know, because you probably put so much pressure on yourself anyway that you could use a little relaxation. So thank you, Devin.
We have another 3 questions. Please raise your hand. Mr. Sohi.
Yes, hi, Jeff.
Yeah.
And thank you for a wonderful presentation today.
You're
And
very
I want to make note, just a comment, basically of, you know, about our lifespan here, our human lifespan that takes over a certain number of years. And from that, you know, we're born conscious. There's nothing wrong with us. We're born pure. We're born of creation. From that point forward, we are conditioned. We are layered, if you like. And through that layering and conditioning, we become inauthentic. We reach a point as a human, at some point in our human development, we realize that no matter what we've attained in life, we cannot continue to live from this paradigm. It becomes impossible to take another breath or take another step. And we send up a silent prayer to creation at that time. We don't even know we're asking it because we're so desperate. And if there was words to this prayer, it would be, something's got to change. I cannot subscribe to the fact that human being should be living here like this, and I don't know which way to go. And I'm willing to go through whatever is possible in order to see what is real and how I can live here real.
It's beautiful.
Mr. Sohi, Jura Sohi.
Thank you very much. My question is that once we are alive now, we participate in the world problem. So once after you said life after death, so as you said, the soul doesn't die. So is that soul still can participate in the world's problems here? Or is there in hell or heaven anywhere?
These are questions I don't know the answer to, I'm afraid. There's some things I'm certain of and some things I have no idea about. And I pray to God that I am able to tell the difference between the two. But yeah, these are questions I don't know the answer to. Heaven and hell, I don't know exactly what those things mean anymore. Just a lot of questions still left, for me at least.
question.
right.
As you said, the soul doesn't die. Is that soul can participate or can express or can do something in the life? As you said, now you have a Zoom, you have so many things, the world is going through so many problems. We can participate the problem here, or we can think about after death, what is going to happen now after that?
I don't know. I'm not worried about after death because I don't really
That-
believe in death
Yeah.
anymore. I just believe that my eternal awareness will move beyond this body. And what's going to happen then, I'm not really sure. I kind of suspect I'm going to end up in a different body, and I'm hoping it's at a better time than this, or maybe a better planet. I'm not sure what, but I don't know. Maybe I'm going to end up in the Middle Ages. You know, it could get worse. So yeah, I'm not sure. But Vinesh, I am going to need to leave because I actually have another appointment to get to.
Okay, so we would like to thank Mr. Jeff Carreira for wonderful talk.
Thank you all very much.
And also, as he said, that we should be practicing being content, giving up control, surrender, and all these practices we should try to put in real life. Our next event will be in 4 weeks from now. So thanks everyone for coming, and see you again.
Oh, thank you so much, Vinesh, and thanks everyone for being here. Oops, we got a little static there.
If some people want to stay and talk to each other or ask questions, you are welcome. Otherwise,
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
have a good day.
Thank you,
Jeff,
Vinesh.
Thanks for
especially have a
everything.
good day.
You're very welcome. Thank you all.
Merci beaucoup.
Jaslyn, if you can stay.
No problem.
Anybody else will make any comment? Eric? Eric, unmute yourself. Eric is not there.
The party must also reach consensus on the larger social.
Anybody wants to make any comment? Eric, you have any comment?
Yes, I'd like to say that I really enjoyed his talk. And a lot of what it comes down to for me is the practice of acceptance. So when he talks about being content with what is and whatever's going on in our emotions or in our minds or in our body, for me, that has to do with self-acceptance. So being content and being accepting of all things that are present in us.
Not easy to put in practice, right?
100%.
Yeah. Lucy, you have any comment?
Like Eric said, we have to accept, we have to practice meditation. I like very well this conference and what it was said. Thanks very much, Vinesh.
Linda? Linda, you have any comment? Anyone
yes.
else? Yeah, go ahead. You have any comment?
Well, I learned something very important today is to accept everything that is going on, even if we think that it's negative. To when we live something negative or positive, we have to accept it, and that's part of it. So I learned that I think it's very something that I learned today that's very important. It's very important for my practice. And it's not the first time I hear that we must be like separated from like our body and it's illusion what we're seeing. And I have a little bit of problem with that. I have a, it's like if my mind is unable to understand it. And I even think that it's scary when I hear things like that. It's not the first time. And I had the same feeling that it's like scary, like this separation, like if the looking at our life like it was an illusion. I have a little bit problems with this concept, but already I practice, well, accept that it's scary and try to understand what it means.
You have to listen to some more podcasts on that topic.
Yeah. I don't know if somebody have any comments on that concept. I would like to hear them too. And thank you very much for organizing this
You're
meeting.
welcome. Diane, you have any comment? John, still we have 10 people. Anybody will like to say anything?
Sure, I can say something. Jeff made a comment about thy will, not mine, be done. And there's another phrase that I've become aware of that is helpful for me, and it's thy will and mine be one. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Robert or Jeffrey, any comment? Jonah?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, you can hear me?
yeah, we can hear you.
Because I don't have the eyesight to tell whether my mic's on or off.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So that was great, Diane. A thought that I've been having recently is that beyond the thoughts and feelings, there's a place of love that I'm not aware of. That's bigger than me. And I need that to get beyond my mind's desire to like correct people or judge them or get angry at dumb thoughts. But there's a place of love that is calling me. So thy will plus mine be one.
Thanks a lot. Jonah?
Thank you.